Welcome to the Rock Worldwide Show here on WSHO Sunshine 800 AM. Trey Roberts with you. I think we have a good show for you today. I guess time will tell. If you want to be a part of the program, you can give us a call, 504-527-0800, 504-527-0800. Be patient with us as we're having a little bit of difficulty with the telephone lines. But you can also go to Facebook, just type in the Rock Worldwide Show, or at Kingdom Useful, either on YouTube or Twitter. We're streaming live at all those places, and you can jump in and join us live there. You can also make comments there, and we'll try to interact with you there as well. And as always, you can go to WSHO.com, as I am doing right now. Scroll down the page just a little bit. Jump into the chat room. Let people know who you are. Some of you get very creative with your names. And there I am. And there you are. And we can interact with one another. Let's see here. Is that sound from War of the Worlds? No. That famous speech is a speech given by silent film star Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin, if you have not seen The Great Dictator, might just be The Dictator, but I think it's The Great Dictator. He plays two parts in that. He plays an Adolf Hitler-like character, but he also plays a Jewish barber from the ghettos in Europe, and who happens to look exactly like the Fuhrer. And something happens to the Fuhrer, I forget just off the top of my head. And his speech that he gives, the barber, that is, he gives a speech. And he's supposed to get up there and he's supposed to give this rousing speech to the people of Germany. And in actuality, he ends up going up there and he ends up not doing what they wanted him to do. And he gives this amazing liberty speech, this amazing speech on how humans don't allow yourselves to be caught up and used by evil people. If you just go to like YouTube and type in Charlie Chaplin dictator speech, they've got some really good ones to music, and it's a really good speech. I actually had one of my children. I had her memorize it for one of her presentations, and it's not heard. But it's a great speech. It's one of the best ever. And of course, there's Dr. King, and there's a little bit of the Apollo moon landing in there. A little blend of everything. So appreciate that question, whoever you are over there at 689-34567. Okay, we got a lot to get into. I got two big stories that I want to do. First half of the show, then the second half of the show. So hopefully you'll stick around with us for both. Yeah, I think in the second half of the show, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on right now with Facebook. If you're paying attention, this is an article that dropped. Let me see if I can get the date on this thing here. No, I don't see a date on it, but I know it's very, very recent. And this is an article that comes from inc.com, inc.com, inc.com. And it's about the Facebook whistleblower. She revealed what everyone already knew. And we'll talk about what that is that everyone already knew. But we'll also talk about how it affects you. We absolutely must start weaning ourselves off of social media. If you are getting the majority of your information from social media, it doesn't matter where. It doesn't matter what platform, but if you're getting news and information from Facebook, number one, you're being played. Number two, you're in an echo chamber. And three, you might be addicted, and it's intentional. We'll talk about that why. So stick around with us for the bottom half of the show to explain why all of that is in fact going on. Um, some of you may remember a reporter named Glenn Greenwald. Um, Glenn Greenwald is um, the reporter that broke the Edward Snowden. He's the one who broke the Edward Snowden story back in the day. Glenn Greenwald was working for the UK Guardian, and he's an educated American constitutional attorney, and he left basically practicing law to become an independent journalist and to actually begin reporting on things that were happening surrounding what was going on with the Constitution and rights codified in the Constitution. And his he really more or less big claim to fame was when Snowden gave him everything that he gave and showed that our intelligence agencies, primarily the apparatuses of the NSA, were gathering all of the metadata and in essence spying on all of us. Now, for many people, the language around what Edward Snowden's revelations revealed meant nothing to us. Like, the majority of people didn't know that government agencies who can see who you're making phone calls to, where you're traveling by way of geo-tracking your phone, the type of apps you're downloading, the type of websites you're visiting, the information when you any app on your phone. If you have, the average person probably has maybe 50 plus apps on their smartphone. Every single one of those apps, if it comes preloaded, part of when you sign your agreement to get your phone is you agree to everything that's preloaded on your phone for them to have access to your data. Majority of people don't know what data is. Data is everything you do and everywhere you go and every way you communicate via using your cellular device. So if you download a new app right after the app installs and before you're able to go into it, you have to agree to their terms and services. Now remember, if the app is free, you are the product. Okay? If the app is free, you're the product. And by you downloading their app or agreeing to use their app for free, what they get out of it is they get real-time, accurate information about your behaviors as seen on your device. So they get all of your all of your information. So for instance, if you're using one app, that app is not just tracking how you use their product. That app gets access to how you're using all of your other apps as well. Most people don't realize that. Whatever apps you have, and for instance, like the social media apps, most of our phones today come preloaded, and you can't uninstall them from your phone for the most part. You can only disable them at best if they're quote unquote legacy apps. But every new app gets access to all the other apps that are already on your phone and how you use them, when you use them, and who you use them with and where you use them. That's what we mean by data. And this was part of the revelation that Edward Snowden, by way of Glenn Greenwald, and then Glenn Greenwald had to basically leave the UK Guardian, go to Brazil, start a website called The Intercept, and from that website do independent journalism in the country of Brazil, because as an American citizen, Snowden had to go into hiding. The Obama administration basically exiled him. And there was a lot of debate as to whether or not Edward Snowden's revelations were traitorous or whether they were heroic. And over time, my opinion has changed in interviews that I've seen with Snowden, in interviews that I've listened to with Glenn Greenwald, looking at what the Obama administration did to Edward Snowden. Snowden wasn't interested in living in Russia for the rest of his life. He wasn't interested in being a turncoat to any communist entities. I mean, the first place he went to was Hong Kong. He went to a free place. Hong Kong had not yet been turned over to the Chinese Communist Party yet by way of the British government. But Glenn Greenwald was just recently on Tucker Carlson. This is an article from Real Clear Politics, and the basic question, or what Glenn Greenwald reveals to us in his recent interview, is the idea of who actually is in control of our government right now. This is part of the reason, what I'm going to share with you today is part of the reason why I think it's a waste of time for us to get on air, to get on to radio stations, and to spend any time on social media websites. And I'm going to tie that in toward the end here. And spend any time in this binary Democrat versus Republican, right versus left banter and debate, this false dichotomy. Now, for most people, it's going to be very difficult for them to get off of this left-right paradigm because that's all we've known. But you have to get off of it. Get off of the Republican Party, and listen, I'm talking nationally, okay? I'm talking the federal government. The government that we all feel is more and more intrusive every single year that goes by. The government that we see is financially out of control, budgetarily completely irresponsible. Government that people worry about infringing upon the individual liberties of American citizens across the fruited plain. I'm not talking about your local Republican Party. Again, the majority of people don't know a single Republican or Democrat locally that they are beholden to, their parish council person who's in charge of their district, their school board member, their state legislator, be it a representative or a state senator. The majority of people just don't know the government that affects your lives on a more regular basis. And we're drawn into the 24-hour news cycle by way of Fox, NBC, CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS. We're drawn into this polarity, this body politic that is constantly just dialectically creating the conflict so that they can move their narratives forward. Keep in mind that before the election of Donald Trump, really before the announcement that he was going to run for president, before him and Melania came down the golden escalator, the legacy media, the corporate media in the United States of America was borderline bankrupt, and there were conversations being discussed about getting federal bailouts for newspapers and magazines across the United States. You have to keep a historical perspective in all of this, because that's not that long ago that we're talking about. For us to get drawn into this left-right paradigm, for us to get drawn into Trump's in control or Biden's in control, Trump does everything right and Biden does everything wrong, or Biden does everything right and Trump's just a complete maniacal, ego-driven moron, whatever binary you buy into, it's going to require discernment from us to be able to understand who's actually in control. And I think Glenn Greenwald has his finger on the pulse of exactly who is in control right now. So he goes on Tucker Carlson tonight on the Fox News network. And Tucker asked him just right out, who do you think is actually in charge of the government at this point? Like, who's in control? Glenn Greenwald basically says that it's kind of bizarre if you really think that the Trump presidency brought us so much evidence showing us who was in control. And one of the clips that he references is a clip on the Rachel Maddow show when Chuck Schumer said that he had posted in the CIA for getting Iraq wrong. And Chuck Schumer said, ethics aside, how stupid could he have been to do that to the CIA? Because he said, if you challenge the CIA, they have 6 different ways to Sunday to get back at you. Okay, now think about this. This is now the Senate, one of the Senate majority leaders, a sitting United States senator, and he tells Rachel Maddow and her audience very clearly that you don't stand up to the CIA of the United States of America. The entire Trump presidency was driven by all sorts of narratives from the media about how heroic independent generals like Mad Dog Mattis and John Kelly and H.R. McMaster, and how they were going to save us from this elected president. There were all kinds of reports during the Trump administration about how the security state officials would conceal classified information that they didn't want President Trump to have in order to manipulate his decision-making or subvert or ignore his decision-making, like when he would tell them to withdraw troops from Syria, and they would lie to him, and they would pretend that they actually did. And at the time, like, this was celebrated. They would say that there is a deep state in the United States, which is nothing more than what Dwight Eisenhower warned about. He warned us about a permanent power faction in Washington, D.C. that rules the country regardless of the outcomes of the elections. And these people, these media apparatuses of the left and of the Democrat Party, they would tell you that if you said anything like that during the Trump administration, they would tell you that you're crazy, that you're a conspiracy theorist. And they would even cheer for the classic definition of the deep state in the first place. And you have to almost be a conspiracy theorist or incredibly gullible not to believe that it doesn't exist. And I like what Tucker Carlson brought up. Tucker Carlson said that he sort of was in that group that's like, oh, come on. Like, really, do we have a big problem with the deep state? Is that really? But he said that there was a piece of evidence that really won him over. And he said that famously people like to say, you know, like, who's in charge? Look at who, if you want to know who's really in charge of an organization, look at who you're not allowed to criticize. Who's above criticism in any organization actually tells you who is the one in charge. And so just ask yourself right now, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, who do you never hear Republicans and Democrats ever criticize? I'll wait for a second for you to think about it. Democrats don't criticize this organization. Republicans don't criticize this organization. And we know historically that anyone who has tried to basically reform or criticize or publicly ridicule or strip away some of the power from this organization, it has not ended well for them. And in some cases, it has ended in assassination. It has ended in actual life. It is careers have been ended. It's the national security state. Republicans are happy. Listen, Republicans are happy to go after the IRS. They don't hesitate to go after the Department of Education. But I can't remember the last time that a Republican leader meaningfully criticized the DOJ or the Pentagon. And Democrats are exactly the same. So doesn't that kind of tell you everything? And Glenn went on to kind of explain. He said, look, the amazing thing is that for whatever you want to think or point to in Donald Trump's comportment and governments, and there's a lot of things that I would argue are valid criticisms, but one of the most important things that he did during his presidency, and it doesn't get talked about much, is that he deviated from that cage that presidents are kept in, which is that he was told that the American people, he spoke directly to the American people, to you and I. And he said that there are security state agents who think that they can run the government, and he stood up to them and he challenged their orthodoxies and their pieties. And he showed Americans, especially people in the Republican Party on the right, that these institutions are not noble. They are not benevolent. They are highly pernicious. They want to interfere with our domestic politics, and they ought to be deeply distrusted. And Glenn Greenwald thinks that that was one of the most important things that President Trump did. And it was for that reason, his willingness to criticize the national state, the national security state, the Pentagon, the generals. He was willing to fire these people. That they hated him. This is why people like John Brennan hated President Trump and didn't get along with him. It is the military-industrial complex, and for the most part, the military-industrial complex is embedded deeply in the deep state, in the national security state. This is why they hated him. This is why they spent 4 years trying to undermine his presidency. It's the amazing thing that they always talk about the sanctity of democracy. But how was democracy more threatened than having unelected people who operate in the dark, free to undermine and sabotage the person that Americans chose as their president? And Tucker actually agreed with Glenn Greenwald. If you get a chance to go see that interview, go see it. Now listen, we are not a democracy in the purest sense of the word democracy. We know that. You've been through my civics class. We are a constitutional republic. We elect representatives who go they do the bidding of the American people. But we're not a democracy where what we want to have happen and what we say happens must take place and must happen. You have to get over that. That's just not how our government works. But if you want to wreck democracy, this is how you do it. This is what you do. There is just too much evidence that the last president, not Biden, President Donald J. Trump, he was concerned about their power on a personal level. Like he sort of understood how powerful they really are. I mean, really quick. At this stage of the game, as we move forward, do any of you out there think that it's going to be possible for any president in the future to push back and to strip the unelected powers, the unelected power centers, to deconstruct them, to level them, and some of the power that they hold in government? Because remember, these people serve over the course of multiple presidencies. Once a president is gone, these people remain. when Glenn Greenwald in this particular interview thought about that question, Greenwald said that basically what you would need is a big army behind you if you were going to do it. And he points back to why people were petrified of people like J. Edgar Hoover. Because Hoover kept dossiers on every politician throughout Washington. And they have amassed the FBI, the DOJ, the CIA, the National Security, the agency, the Pentagon, all of the military branches. They have amassed a lot of power. And what we have to rise up, what this population of Americans has to rise up and do, is we have to be against them. For a president to be able to come into office and to strip these power centers of their power and return power to the people, we're going to have someone that's going to bring back the alignment of the three branches of government. Demand that the Supreme Court begin to once again interpret the laws. Demand that Congress begin again to make meaningful laws. And as an executive branch, fight the resistance to continue with your own pen, write laws with executive orders, strip regulations like Trump was doing, don't write executive orders, and use your bully pulpit to make Congress get out there and do and push your agenda through legally, ethically, and constitutionally. This is not new for someone like me. And if you've been listening to me for any amount of time, you know this to be the case. On January 23rd in 2018, so we're talking over 3 years ago, I made a post on Facebook, and here's what I said. I did not vote for Donald Trump. But can all of you rabid, illogical, irrational, stylistically disagreeable, anti-Trump people move on from the Russia collusion crap, pivot, and use that same outrage against the FBI, the DOJ, and the weaponizing of our intelligence agencies against ideological and political adversaries? Please feel free to help the rest of us restore the rule of law. Hashtag LexRex, hashtag Nation of Laws, hashtag Lanterns Buzz. Now, I'll show you the post. I have the receipts. I have the receipts that show that I've been on this conversation now for a while, asking people to stop with the right-left paradigm that is broken. It's not, the Republicans and Democrats are useless. They're not helping us. I want to jump into the chat room now, and let's see here. SG, so they are tracking us now. SG, they've been tracking us for a while. You know that. Don't be silly. Mike B, I always have 2 VPNs running while online, and it also blocks ads. Good job, Mike B. But if you have, Mike B, if you're online or if you're on your phone, they still, no system is going to keep us completely out of being surveilled. The only way you can do that is to not have a smartphone, and you have to have a phone that you can basically take the battery out of. So it's almost like we have to go back to non-intelligent, non-smart technology. If it's smart technology, even with VPNs and things that we try to do, ad blockers and such, it's still going to be able to get our data. It is what it is. Let's see here. You bet we're being tracked and cataloged, YN said. SG, Tucker was tipped off. They were spying on him. That's very true. SG, security services. YN, keep fighting for the sinking sand. I'm not fighting for the sinking sand, YN. Okay, I in a lot of ways, I agree with you that we're in a post-constitutional era. The republic has already fallen. It's going to take some time for us to realize it, but the United States, as a republic founded in the Constitution, doesn't exist anymore. Any call for people to go back to the Constitution or the founding principles, I mean, the principles are great. Maybe in the new country that's founded in the future, we can revisit some of those Enlightenment principles and we can pull from some of the best examples of things that worked. I mean, imagine founding a country on the principles of the United States and not having the curse of the institution of slavery to start off with. There's a lot of really good things. And I'm not calling for revolution or for the refounding of the country, but I'm agreeing with you that I'm not arguing. What I am trying to do, I'm trying to pull YN, I'm trying to pull people off of this sinking ship. I'm trying to tell them, stop listening to the three-piece orchestra right there playing. Get to a lifeboat. Get some of your mental health back. Get some of your agency back. Understand that your liberty is given to you because you're created in the likeness and image of God, not because you're an American. The Declaration of Independence tells us that we are endowed with certain rights that cannot ever be alien to us because they're given to us by the Creator. That means that whoever has been created by the Creator, which means all humanity, that we all as human beings created by God have those same rights. Now it's up to us as human beings to form governments that don't infringe upon those rights or think that they can take the place of the Creator. If you get rid of the Creator, then the government becomes the arbiter of who and what rights can be given and to whom they can be given. That's the genius of the experiment of the United States. Back to the chat room. Maybe SG said maybe they are ones making Joey B's mouth move. Well, I mean, yeah, they are Obama holdovers. National Security Advisor Susan Rice. All the different people that the Obama administration put in these positions of government so that they could get back in to office after the Hillary Clinton presidency for Michelle Obama. That was the goal. That was the agenda of the Obama administration before Trump and you, the American public, broke the matrix and elected Donald J. Trump. Now, as it pertains to the matrix, I want to talk a little bit now and shift gears to the revelations that have come out as reported in Inc. magazine or Inc.com. Last night, the whistleblower who handed a trove of documents to Congress, the Securities Exchange Commission, and the Wall Street Journal, she appeared on 60 Minutes. So this had to have been a couple days ago. This had to have been Sunday, a week ago. When she appeared on 60 Minutes, she actually revealed her identity, which I find quite noble. Frances Haugen is the lady's name. And I'm telling you that we need to be listening to this lady. Now, I started off by telling you, if you're getting your information from social media, stop it. You're being played by the algorithm, and you might even be an addict. Now, you know you'll be an addict by the fact that if you try to go for 1 week cold turkey and don't log on to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok for 1 week, and if you feel any anxiety about not looking at your social media accounts for 1 week, if you feel anxiety, you are a dopamine addict, and the algorithm is actually your dope dealer, your dopamine dealer. What she said, Frances Haugen is the former product manager in Facebook's now disbanded Civic Integrity Unit. She said, quote, "Things were substantially worse at Facebook than anything I'd seen before," close quote. Now, she claims that her goal in coming forward was to fix the company and not to harm it. Haugen talked about a list of things that she found as she began digging through the company's documents and research on the company's workplace site, a sort of corporate internal social network. For example, she talked about how Facebook's research shows that people are more likely to engage with content that makes them angry. And engagement leads to monetization. Let me just say that again. Facebook's own research knows that people are more likely to engage with content that makes them angry. Not cat videos, not babies laughing. I don't want to say it, if it makes you angry, if it gets you mad, you're more likely to engage, and the more likely that you engage, the more money they will make. Frances went on and told 60 Minutes reporter Scott Pelley, quote, Facebook has realized that if they change the algorithm to be safer, people will spend less time on the site, they'll click on less ads, and they'll make less money. The most devastating revelation, however, is one that most people already know. Facebook's biggest problem is its founder and CEO, Mark Zuckerberg. Frances said that she has a lot of empathy for Mark. And Mark has never set out to make a hateful platform. But he has allowed choices to be made where the side effect of those choices are that hateful, polarizing content gets more distribution and more reach. Now, Haugen is probably being too generous to Zuckerberg. Okay, he didn't just allow choices to be made. He set the tone. He made the choices. Zuckerberg exerts almost complete control over Facebook. So if he believed that something was wrong, he could have changed it. And there's nothing anyone could do. No single shareholder exerts more control over any publicly traded company than Zuckerberg does at Facebook. Facebook is exactly as Mark Zuckerberg wants it to be. And that leads to quite an important lesson. Everything rises and falls on leadership. Organizations take on the character and values of their leaders. It doesn't matter how big or how small the organization is, it's about leadership. And never has that been a better example or more the case than at Facebook. Zuckerberg sees Facebook as some altruistic force for good in the world and thinks that its net benefit far outweighs any problems that it creates. And of course, if you were building something like Facebook, you'd have to believe that. There's no way you could get up and go to work every day if you think the thing that you were building was destroying individual lives and undermining democracy, unless that was your goal. And Facebook likes to point out that the problem isn't with Facebook, but with the internet. That it's people who share the content, and the company's working hard to combat misinformation and hate and fake news. Except everything Facebook does is to increase engagement, and it turns out that the content that gets the most of it is all the terrible stuff. So putting an end to all that terrible content on its platform is very hard, as Zuckerberg has recently admitted. But even if it wasn't, it would be bad for business. In legacy media, we know that if it bleeds, it leads. I've told the story about former WDSU journalist Ken Jones. Many of you, if you've lived here, you remember the reporter Ken Jones, who worked for WDSU Channel 6 here in New Orleans. For a while, he was a member at my church, and I talked to Ken about the media on a very regular basis because I knew he was an insider. And he was a very humble man, served as an usher at our church, and I loved talking with him. And I asked him one time, after some conversations, some lengthy conversations, I asked him, I said, Ken, I said, how come the media is always so negative? How come the news is always that there's never any positive news? And he began to tell me a story about how he left New Orleans for a while and he went to Houston. And him and a couple of business partners, they got some investors and they attempted to create a local news channel that only focused on positive, uplifting news. No negative stories, nothing, no fake news, no hate-filled news. Everything was going to be positive. And I was like, wow, man, that feels like an amazing undertaking. And I said, Ken, how'd that go? Like, what was the response of the people? And he kind of looked at me curious, like, kind of RCA doggish, he put his head to the side, like, what do you mean? He goes, how did it turn out? I'm here back in New Orleans. And I said, like, it wasn't successful? He said, no, it was an abject failure. It was a complete flop. No one wanted a news channel that was all good news all the time, all positive stories all the time, all uplifting all the time. He said there was no appetite for it. He said it was a complete flop. But he said it was an experiment in understanding the nature of human beings. We say that we don't like the negativity that comes from the legacy corporate media. And we say that we don't like the divisive, negative, hateful, anger-filled rhetoric that comes out of social media. But that's not what the evidence shows. That's not what Facebook realizes. They can't change their business model because anger makes them money. So if they make you more angry, it makes them more money. Now, Andy Stone, a spokesman for Facebook, actually pushed back and made and released a statement to the Wall Street Journal. Here's what spokesperson for Facebook, Andy Stone, had to say. Every day, our teams have to balance protecting the rights of billions of people to express themselves openly with the need to keep our platform a safe and positive place. We continue to make significant improvements to tackle the spread of misinformation and harmful content. To suggest we encourage bad content and do nothing is just not true. Okay. And look, that's wonderful, wonderful talking points. But your internal research shows that engagement increases with content that makes people angry. And as engagement increases, so do the clicks for the ads. And as the ads get clicked, monetization goes up. Facebook is a company that is there to make profit. And so you have to choose making the algorithm safer, nicer, friendlier, fairer, more, might I even say more equitable? But if they do, you're not going to be engaged with it as much. Like Ken Jones's Houston positive news experiment. You're not going to tune in. You want to see the train wrecks. You want to hear about crime. You want to hear about corruption. You want to hear about murder. All of this is a reflection of you. This isn't about Facebook. This isn't about Democrats and Republicans. This is about you. This is about your depravity. You want to know why our leaders go to Washington, D.C., go to Baton Rouge, go to your parish, and don't do right? Because we're the ones who send them there. We allowed Dollar Bill Jefferson to represent this particular congressional district for all those years. We allow criminal, corrupt politicians to represent us. Stop complaining. Stop whining about how horrible our leaders are. Get the money out of politics. Become a responsible citizen. Do your part. Educate yourself on the issues. Figure out what's happening locally to you and your community. Get involved with things that can change your neighborhood and your streets and your community and your parish, then your state. And then if you're not too tired from figuring that out, then turn on the national news and figure out what's going on in Washington, D.C. Because as long as we're over there looking at and watching the puppet show, meanwhile, what's really going on, we're not paying attention to. And it's our own doggone fault. Facebook knows exactly how bad it is for the world because the world is using Facebook. And that's the problem with Facebook's argument. Because just as the whistleblower showed, yes, helping families connect is a good thing, but it comes at a huge cost. And Facebook knows exactly what that cost is. It has intentionally decided that it's worth it to keep the profit machine going. And who's decided that? Zuckerberg. And ultimately, Zuckerberg hasn't shown that he isn't objective about the effects of what he built on the world. He's built Facebook on the world and social media platforms. That's why they call it a platform. They've built it on you, over you, so that they could be on the platform talking down to you, punching down to you, telling you that they know what you need to be doing. They know what's misinformation. They know better than you. But we're gonna get on it several times today. We're gonna post a bunch of stuff. We're gonna like a bunch of stuff, and we're gonna waste our life for a dopamine hit. Zuckerberg has shown that he isn't able to see Facebook for what it is. Rather, he still believes and he still views Facebook as some kind of idealistic platform, but that only exists in his mind. And that's a problem because Zuckerberg's delusion, his lack of awareness, it has real world consequences. And we've experienced it in this last election. There's like 30% of Biden voters that said, have they known about the Hunter Biden revelations coming out of the New York Post, had they known about that story leading up to the election, they would not have voted for Biden because they realized that Biden and the Biden crime family has been bought, sealed, paid, and sealed and delivered by the Chinese Communist Party. What social media did in this last election, if you go to my personal profile on Facebook, I have 5 friends. My former business partner, my wife, and the 3 African missionaries that our church supports in Eastern Africa. There's maybe 2 pages that I like. One's a page dedicated to a podcast that I really enjoy. And I'm not even sure what the other one is. I'm giving myself the leeway. I dump my shows there so people can have access to them. But for me, it's nothing more than a cloud storage program and a place where people can watch me live. I have 65 followers, the people that I follow on Twitter. They're theologians, they're biblical study professors, they're straight news people like Laura Logan and Catherine Hettridge and Cheryl Atkinson. But I don't let the algorithm feed me. I don't take any suggestion. I don't watch anything on YouTube. I only watch the things that I subscribe to. And if the things that I subscribe to are not things that I want to watch, I don't watch it. You have to fight the algorithm. It's the only way that we're going to get back. And we're going to get back to a level of civility when we go out into the real world. If Zuckerberg right now were to hand over control of the company that he started in his Harvard dorm room, he'd still be fantastically rich. He'd still be a part of one of the most incredible Silicon Valley success stories ever. He'd go down as one of the world's most successful entrepreneurs of all time. But he'd be giving up control of one of the world's largest and most important social platforms. And as hard as that might be, if Zuckerberg really cares about making Facebook a force for good, getting out of the way might just be the one thing that could make that happen. How many pastors out there that founded a church won't now get out of the way? They'll go down as the founder of incredible ministries. They'll be a part of some of the most incredible ministry success stories ever. They'll go down as some of the world's most faithful and successful pastors and ministers, preachers, reverends of all time. But if they want their ministries to continue beyond them and continue to be forces for good, it's not all that similar to what Zuckerberg's going to have to do. Get out the way. That's the only thing that could make the result that you just have not been able to get and make happen. Someone else might be able to make that happen. And we have to be okay with that. I'll post both of those stories in the show notes in the comment sections. I want to jump back into real quick the chat room in our last couple of minutes here on the program. Keep in mind, coming up in about 7 minutes from now, Elder Mike Indes and Issues and Answers. So please do stick around after we end our program for his on-air Issues and Answers. That is a live Bible study coming up in just about 7 minutes, about 6.5 minutes from now. He's going to be finishing 1 John today, taking a look at all that we receive when we have a relationship with the Father through the Son. Getting back to the chat room, though, which platform is the best alternative to Facebook for us? How about none, Mike B? Why do you need a platform? A platform for what? Go connect with some real people in your community, Mike B. Go spend some time in real conversations with real people, not with avatars. I mean, look, don't you think that eventually Gab, Parler, I forget what Greenwald's, Rumble, I mean, all of these platforms that are trying to be alternatives to the current platforms, they're all eventually going to, it's the same model. They can say, oh, we're for free speech. Oh, we're not going to get your data. Oh, but there's still a business that needs to make profit. And the only way you get profit is this model: engagement, clicking of ads, monetization. So how then do they do it, Mike B? There's no alternative to being used by mathematical equations that are smarter than us because we have hormones. Joseph's comment in the chat room says, democracy or constitutional republic, it doesn't matter. The white majority of the new slaves today to fight wars for Big Brother and accept multiculturalism as a way of life for them. The question is, when are they going to cry out to their Christian God that they traded long ago? I don't know what a white majority has to do with it, Joseph. So, but other than that, if you're okay, I see why. The white majority of multiculturalism. Okay, so Joseph, keep your xenophobia, please, out of the chat room. Thanks. Mike B has nothing to do with anyone's race. Exactly, Mike B, exactly. Joseph, I'm not even going to read your. Let me see. Let me guess. How quickly does this get anti-Semitic? I just wonder. That's fine. Just pretend like all the other false prophets in land that nothing's wrong and stick your head in the sand. No, and you know what? Ostriches don't even do that. Mike B, God created races. Race is a man-made concept, so God didn't even create races. So no, Mike B, that's not true. Christian or non-Christian, we're all human beings. Who cares what the hue of someone's or the percentage of someone's melanin is? It's just ridiculous. True that might be. I don't even want to. I know you were going back from. Okay, great. All right. All true prophets are unbelievable. Who are you, Joseph? Get out of here. Just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. All right. I think we can. I think we can leave it there. I appreciate everybody. We'll get off of here a little bit early today. Stay in the chat room because remember, coming up is Elder Mike Indes, and I really appreciate everybody who listens in and tunes in. If you want to watch again, go to our different platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. only go and follow our show. Why do we put it there? Trey, you just talked for 30 minutes about why you shouldn't be on social media, yet you're posting this live on social media. Yes, it's a repository. It's a place for you to go to watch good content that's actually going to hopefully better your day, your life, your personhood, your walk with the Lord, your citizenship as an American, your humanity as a human being living in this world, okay, as an imager of God. I'm not monetizing this. I'm not monetizing any of my content. I'm not trying to make money off of this. And I'm on radio, so just trying to look a little nicer for radio. My face for radio is getting better, and so hopefully you'll tune in and watch it. But I do want you to be aware of the deep state. That's where we need to be focusing right now, not the general right-left politics. That paradigm is broken. It's a distraction. It's a puppet show. You know that when you watch a puppet show, there are other people controlling and doing it. When you watch Elmo's World or Sesame Street, if you have grandkids or little kids, then boom, you know that you're not watching a live thing, a real thing. You're watching a fabricated thing. You're watching a created thing. All right, so keep that in mind. And I guess without further ado, I guess we will go ahead and shut this one down for the day. Thank you for joining us here on the Rock Worldwide Show. Tune in every Saturday morning at the same time, 11 a.m. for the Rock Worldwide Show. And remember, oppose progressivism wherever it rears its ugly head. Illuminate the light of truth. We'll see you next time.